clearly and proving scientifically that there is an affection. So this study conducted by Arayara is a great study that comes to add to our knowledge, not just that the coal is an element that brought a lot of environmental impact in the region, the South region, like Criciúma in Santa Catarina, and other scholars that have led studies on this impact, but we understand that it is already a systemic impact. It's not crying over spilled milk. It's like drying out ice. It's a deep impact. And today, we take a closer look at coal related not just to environmental and social impact, but impacts on human health, on Candiota, and of course, the impacts that have the products by coal that produce the emissions of greenhouse gases. So this is a key moment, Professor Francisco and Olga, to welcome us here for a proper critical debate and an analysis that will increase our awareness on the human impact on human health and also the clarity of the subject. So Waldo, he must leave now because he's actually teaching now. So he just came in for a quick visit. And you understand how important academic life is. Yeah, you can call him wonderful because he is indeed wonderful. So let's move on. I'm going to read out the presentation by Arayara so that everyone knows. It's in Arayara International. It's a social civil society with nonprofit that acts in the defense of life, climate justice, focusing on just energy transition. It combines education, scientific studies, social mobilization, and litigation to promote sustainability, to fight fossil fuels exploration, and protect environmental defenders. What I would like to hear is that this is an activist proposal that is aligned with Arayara, and that should not just be laid within the academic environment, but it should be a social and active pathway that will demand ethical attitudes that Arayara carries out wonderfully. So I'd like to present the executive director, Nicole Oliveira, who will coordinate the next part of this event. Arayara Institute is the largest environmental litigation NGO in Latin America. Think about it. Environmental litigation, we are entitled to have a voice. And she's an expert with over 20 years of expert in climate change, just energy transitions, and she's a lawyer. She has 2 masters in conflict resolution and international law from Costa Rica and Austria. So with that, I would like to give the floor to Nicole Oliveira so that her, through digital media, they're part of our environment, can proceed with the development of our activity. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Marcio. Good morning, everyone. Our good morning, journalists, our esteemed guests, authorities, professors. I would like to, first of all, welcome this very important event. It's very meaningful to all of us. It's a deep honor to be here with you while we join this critical journey to find the impact on health, on the generation of energy by coal in Candiota. This is a benchmark on a vital study that tries to find the intersection between energy and public health in our community. When we are here, we like to express my admiration for all the organizations that are part of this initiative. I would like to appreciate CREA that has lay down the challenges we find in our energy grid, and that has led us to the base of such a key study. The dedication and fostering of the cause on health, it's valuable, and it can lead to improvements all over the world. I would like to do a special thankful to our talented scientists from Arayara that brought their passion and their tireless seek for truth. Their hard work has led us to valuable insights that can help us form public policies and improve people's health. I would like to also to thank the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul, represented by Professor Marcio, in such a valuable partnership. I would like to thank ILEA through Professor Olga, because they reinforce the importance on the research on public health. And I would like to recognize our audience, the members of this community whose lives are touched by these issues every day. These are voices that matter. Their involvement is critical in the moment that we are trying to create a healthier environment to everyone. This is not about data. This is about families and people and future. Together, we are pioneering an issue on public health when we are talking about a better tomorrow. I'm very carried away to see where this study will lead us, how we can improve and train our communities, and how we can improve public policies. This is a critical moment, and I am looking forward to the new discoveries and debates. So I'd like to give the floor back. Well, good morning. I am John, Energy Transition Manager at Arayara. It's a great pleasure to be here at the university with the launch of this event and with your VIP presence here. Due to our delay, I would like to firstly apologize. We have had some technical issues with Zoom and then YouTube. It was just a setup issue. We have adjusted it, and we are broadcasting live in YouTube into English and into Portuguese. I also would like to name the representatives of the state who are here. We have Marjorie for Environment, and we have Otávio, who is SEMA's mining director. And we are going to do a little acceleration to learn about the study, and it's also to have this key debate moment that Olga, myself, Professor Marcio, that is also to listen to you who are here. So I would like to move on to following protocol. I was going to do reading their introduction, but I would like them to do their brief presentation on the CREA team, just as Nicole introduced. It's an international NGO on studies when they talk about energy and air quality. And the team that has collaborated with the study, and as we are collaborating together, we have Caillou, Jamie, and Hannah, and Vera. It's an honor to have this team with us. I think each one of them is in a different country. They can even say where they are speaking from. And we will have the presentation of the study so that you understand our next steps. We have presentation methodology and the data by CREA NGO, and then we're going to have a panel and we will open for the public. We have some printed copies here, and also on our website on the event page, you will find the study available.
Just checking you can hear me and you can see my screen. So hello, everybody, and thank you so much for the invitation today. It's a pleasure to be here to share the results of our new report. And I want to especially thank the university, as well as our partner, Arayara, and also everybody in the audience today. So today we're launching our project, which is revealing some of these hidden health costs and air pollution costs all in Candiota. And one of the most stark results is that the cumulative impacts from coal use in this region are projected to lead to around 1,300 deaths by 2040. And these health impacts not only impact people at a personal level, but it also affects the economy as these things are translated into economic impacts. And we estimate that it's almost 12 billion Brazilian real. So a small introduction into our team at CREA. Three of us have been contributing to this project. They are myself, Dr. Jamie Kelly. My background is in atmospheric and environmental sciences. There's Vera Tatari, and I'm based in Portugal. We then have Vera, who is based in Finland, who has a specialty in economics and the environment. And then we have Dr. Kai-Yu Chen, who has a PhD in civil and environmental engineering. And all three of us are going to be presenting parts of the results of this study. So I'm going to begin with a bit of background onto this topic, and then I'll pass it over to Kai-Yu, who's going to explain the methodology that we've used, as well as some of the results on the toxic air pollution. And then I'll pass it over to Vera, who's going to talk you through some of the health impacts. So, air pollution has a devastating impact on the human body. There are several toxic pollutants that are in the atmosphere. And once they're inhaled by humans, they can actually penetrate through the lungs, enter the blood system, and affect nearly all of the major organs and systems of the human body. This includes cardiovascular diseases, respiratory diseases, lung cancer, heart disease, diabetes, and even dementia. Because of this link between air pollution and human health, the World Health Organization claimed that clean air is fundamental to health. And because of the role of health in humanity, the United Nations claim that air pollution is actually denying billions of people their rights. And so the impacts of air pollution on human health have been established in Brazil through a great deal of academic research, which we're building upon. This academic research has already made really strong links between air pollution and human health, premature deaths, the role of wildfire, and reduced life expectancy. There's also been a lot of academic research into how air pollution affects people living in urban environments, as well as the linkages to the economy. Now, air pollution originates from a variety of different sources, including vehicles, industry, and also coal. So within Candiota, there are several coal mining and power generation activities. And they were particularly worrying for us, as we know that the coal being used here is quite inefficient. It has a low calorific content. And that means that quite a lot of it is needed to be used in order to reach a significant amount of energy. We were also originally concerned about it because it's particularly dirty. It has quite a high ash content. And so the mining of this fuel, as well as the burning it, has the potential to release many different things. Toxic fine particles, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, as well as a plethora of heavy metals. And so with this region accounting for such a large fraction of the nation's coal production, as well as there being a huge potential of it containing a lot of the coal reserves in the future, we set out to investigate the question of how has the historical use of coal in Candiota affected air pollution, the health, and the economy? And if it's continued, how will it affect the population? And with that, I'll pass it over to Kai-Yu to talk about how we answered this question.
Thank you, Jamie. Hello, everyone. My name is Kai, and I'm air quality analyst doing the research for this work. So this slide shows our methodology. and it's a general workflow that we did for very important research to quantify the public health and economic costs from Candiota. So the first step, we collect information of the emission from the coal-fire plant and mining pits. With this information, we can conduct our air quality model, and this model can provide us the pollution map, the contribution from the coal-fired power plant and the mining pit. And with the information of the pollution level, we can calculate the health impact. And the health impact includes some uh, major disease and the cause of the death. And with the death and the disease number, we can calculate the associated economic cost. So this is the overall workflow of this study. Jamie, next slide, please. So this slide shows the location of the coal-fired power plant and the mining pits. And figure on the right shows the example of the data we collect and the data we use in the model. So we have hourly data and we use the data to run a simulation. Jamie, next slide. And this figure shows the process of the air quality model. We use air dispersion model, which called CalPath. This model can simulate the process of the pollution and its transport in the atmosphere. So the pollutant emitted from the stack and transport to downwind area following the wind, and it also deposit to the ground, and the model can eventually give us the surface level of the pollution, and we can use the distribution map to do the calculation. Jamie, next slide. So here's an example of the model output. There's three maps we have here: annual mean PM2.5, annual mean NO2, and annual mean SO2. So we can see in the figure, the small yellow triangle here means the location of the coal-fired power plant, and we can see it caused the increase of the annual mean level of PM2.5, NO2, and SO2 level. And Jamie, next slide, please. So with the pollution level, we can use the concentration response function to calculate the health impact. So the health impact, we include mostly the cardiovascular disease and the respiratory disease and the cause of death. And in the left panel, it shows some data source we use for the calculation, including the death rate, population, GDP, and everything, and also the risk ratio we use in the concentration response function. We use the concentration response function to calculate the death and the disease due to PM2.5 and NO2. And with those information, we are able to calculate the associated economic costs. So the economic costs, including the willingness to pay and the cost of illness, and also the value of life. With this information, we can able to provide the economic loss due to the Candiota. And I will pass it over to Vela.
Thanks a lot, Caio. So Caio here explained the methodology for our health impact analysis. And in the next slides, I will go through some of the historical health impacts that the projects in Candiota have already caused between 2017 and 2025. And it all begins with births and harming life before birth. So, for example, the projects in Candiota have already caused 180 preterm births, and in addition to that, low birth weight births. Next slide. And in addition to that, of course, there are lots of respiratory health impacts, such as asthma emergency room visits, which have been 610. And in addition to that, there have been like new cases of asthma and other chronic diseases and stuff. And of course, due to all the health impacts, it is disrupting the workforce. And we estimate that there have been 170 million work absences so far since 2017. Next. But the most devastating impact is the death. And we estimate that there have already been 430 deaths in total, and there's more to come. We will keep on going with operations like this. And all the health impacts have economic cost, as Caio already stated here in the methodology, and that has been 5.1 billion Brazil plus or with BRL. And yeah, more is to come. Next slide, please. So here's the future impacts. And if the license will continue until 2040, that could cause 870 deaths additionally to all the 430 deaths already caused, and 6.6 billion in economic costs. Next slide. And due to the location of Candiota being very near other countries, such as Argentina and Uruguay and other big cities, so when it comes to the distribution of population, Sao Paulo, which is the biggest city in Brazil close to Candiota, is actually quite far compared to Buenos Aires and Montevideo and other cities in Argentina, which are very much nearer geographically, as you can see on the map here. So you can see that Candiota has very much of transboundary health impacts, and most of those are in Argentina. So here we can see that cumulatively, so if we estimate all the deaths between 2017 and 2040, it could cause 735 deaths in Argentina. And of course, 385 in Brazil and 118 in Uruguay. So we can go to the conclusions. So as we can see, historical coal use in Candiota has had a severe impacts on the air quality and public health and economy. And this includes hundreds of deaths, and it also leads to other health impacts such as adverse birth, damages in respiratory health, and millions of work absences. And while the coal industry provides jobs and electricity, it also weakens the economy through draining public budgets and increases health expenditures. Then we have some recommendations that we could do in order to reduce all these adverse effects and negative health impacts. And those are accelerated phase out of coal-fired power generation in Candiota in general, and termination of public subsidies and preferential financial treatment for coal operations, because some of these operations are very heavily economically supported by the government. So we need to get rid of that. And in addition to that, some strengthened enforcement of environmental licensing and emission limits in general that aren't really well obligated here at the moment. So thanks for listening. As you can see, coal in Candiota is not just a health issue, it is an economic liability for Brazil, and we need to take that seriously. Thanks. Please feel free to ask us any questions.
Obrigado, equipe. Obrigado pela apresentação, excelente
Thank you for your
apresentação.
presentation, great presentation of the
Proposta agora
CREA team. Now our
inclusive com quem está online, a gente
idea
vai formar
will
essa mesa híbrida, né? Então,
create this
eu já
hybrid
convido
panel with
professor me
people
ajuda
who
no
are present
microfone,
here and
mesa,
some who are online,
para nós compormos a mesa,
so
para cada fazer uma breve apresentação.
so
Então, eu já
that
convido meu colega Urias.
each one will invite our colleague Urias, so
Agora a
each one
doutora
can make a brief presentation.
Lavínia,
Dr.
desculpa,
Lavínia,
professor doutor Carlos Dora.
Professor Carlos Dora.
Eu vou estar compondo também e
I will be
online
present
está a
on the
nossa
panel, and
colega
online we
do
have
Observatório do Carvão,
our
a Daniela, que eu acho que o pessoal
colleague from the
colocar ela.
co-watch, Daniela.
Beleza. Isso, podem ficar por aí. Acho que começamos, professora. Pode começar?
So I think we can
Pode ser?
begin.
Pode ser, Olga. Pode vir. E se quiser também participar, se quiser.
You can you can come. You need to use the microphone. So Professor Rodrigo Herrera, through his technical work, he's a professor of statistics in URGS, and he did this technical report, and it's just an opinion, a technical opinion, in just the final remarks of his technical opinion. So the study presents a methodological structure that was the focus of his study that is consistent to international approach to assess impacts on health. It is technically well fundamented, but its results must be interpreted as modeled estimates relying on presumptions and subject to relevant uncertainties. So they are better for scenario analysis and support for discussions of public policies rather than the observed events. And I think that our colleagues are going to discuss these themes and these issues. I'm Carlos Doria. I'm a doctor, I'm epidemiologist, and worked in the health ministry for many years. And and also I worked at the WHO. And this data source that were used in the disease panel of disease model of disease and what was developed by Don Carlac and Eric that were reported and used, they are correct. So it's a pleasure to see that the methodologies of the estimate methods are according to international models. I really liked the presentation and on how they talked about air pollution. They spoke very clearly. The air pollution causes so many deaths, as much deaths as tobacco. We talk a lot about tobacco, and it's focused on in the individuals, but the air pollution that comes from coal mines and transportations using is not much talked about. And when we have prevention measures that are really effective for health and climate preservation, when we think about air pollution and climate changes that we haven't talked about it yet, as the non-transmissible diseases, they have a common source that can be work in the same synergy. And I think this is a very important theme.
partir disso, eu acho que botar o acento em Candiota numa fonte de combustível que é
Well,
desnecessária,
Candiota has
considerando que
a
existem alternativas
fuel source that is
essas
not
alternativas
necessary
limpas também
because we have clean
causam,
alternatives.
oportunizam
These
emprego,
clean alternatives
uma série de
also
vantagens que pode se
create
obter
jobs, and there
também
are
através
several
de
other
de
advantages
outras
that can be
metodologias. Eu acho
obtained
que é
through
importante
other
salientar,
methodologies.
porque
But
tem
it's
estudo
important to
de ESE, por
highlight
exemplo,
that we
olha,
have
tem
a
1.300
study from the
empregados
as
nessa indústria.
saying that
O que aconteceu?
there
Ele
are
tem, eles
1,300
pesquisam as outras 3 ou 4 mil
employees
pessoas
in
que
this
dependem
industry
economicamente
and
indiretamente
other
disso.
3,000 to 4,000
Isso
people
é
who rely
importante que se
economically on
considere,
this.
porque
So it's
quando se
important
faz
to
uma
consider
avaliação de
this
impacto na
because when
saúde,
we
daí eu
do
vou me
a
voltar
health impact
à disciplina
analysis,
que eu estou ensinando aqui, que eu
and I'm
estou
going
dando curso
to
na universidade,
focus
e que é
on
uma avaliação
my
de impacto na saúde. Essa avaliação de
what I
impacto
teach is
inclui a avaliação do
the
risco
health
quantitativo que
impact
vocês fizeram, que
and
está colocado aqui,
includes
mas não é
the
só isso.
numbers that
O
you've
que a
included,
gente
but it's not
precisa numa
just that.
avaliação de impacto na saúde é
What we
considerar
need in
toda
an
a quantidade
health
de
impact assessment
impactos na
is to
saúde
take
que
into
essa
account several other
operação
things that
e essa
this
indústria
operation, this
ocasiona,
industry
positivos e negativos.
generates, whether
Dar
they're
emprego,
positive
isso é
or
bom,
negative.
isso é bom para a saúde.
So
Então tem que estar
providing
documentado.
jobs is good for health, so you need to
Agora,
document
existem
that as well.
alternativas,
But there
então,
are
a
alternatives,
avaliação de impacto na saúde também considera
and we need also to
alternativas.
consider
Que mais,
several alternatives.
como é
What
que se poderia
else?
produzir
How else could we
energia
produce
nessa
energy
região?
in
Qual é o
this
cenário
region?
de
What's
mudança
the
energética?
scenario
Criar
of
tantos empregos ao máximo.
climate change or
Então,
energy change, or
esses
how
aspectos são
could we
importantes.
create other jobs?
Outro
So
aspecto
these
importante
things
é
are
que, em
important.
geral, uma
Other
indústria
important aspect is that in
desse
general,
tipo
an
gera
industry
uma
such as this
migração
generate
de
a
muitas vezes homens
migration
jovens,
of
solteiros,
young men,
que
single,
implicam que têm
and that
serviços de
implies
sexo, de comida,
to
de
have
outros tipos,
services,
e
sex services,
riscos
food
também
services
paralelos.
that
Por
are
exemplo, o
parallel
jovem
but
usa
are
mais
at risk.
motocicleta, dá mais acidente de
Young people,
tráfego, usa
they
mais
ride more
álcool,
bicycles,
tem
they drink more
casos de
alcohol, so we have
violência
more
intrapessoal, violência sexual.
bike
São
accidents,
coisas
there
que
are
não
more
são
sexual violence.
negligíveis,
So
ou
these
negligenciáveis,
things should not be
ah,
denied,
negligíveis. Tá? Então, eu acho
neglected.
que negligenciáveis. Muito obrigado. Então,
So thank you. It's
eu acho que
neglected
pintar
then.
esse quadro, que é mais complexo
So
do que foi
we have
apresentado,
more
porque
complex
o que foi apresentado foi dos
structure.
elementos, que é a poluição do ar.
We had one of
Mas
the elements,
esse
which is
quadro
air
mais complexo é
pollution,
uma parte
but
muito
this
importante
complex
da avaliação
structure
de
is
impacto da saúde,
really
da
important
metodologia que a gente chama,
for the
não só avaliação da
methodology
poluição
that
do
we
ar, chama
use
isso de avaliação de
in
impacto da saúde. Mas a Associação Internacional de Avaliação de Impacto da Saúde não
air
chama,
impact
tem um conceito que é muito mais parecido com a avaliação de
assessment.
impacto ambiental, avaliação de
So
impacto
we have
social, que
environmental
implica que se tem
impact,
que
social
considerar grupos de
impact.
interesse,
We have
que
to
se tem que
conciliate
consultar as
interest groups.
populações,
We
tem
have
a
to
parte de participação
consult
e
the
discurso,
populations.
que é
We
mais
have to
ampla
hear
do
the
que só escutar
populations,
a
which
ciência
is
e os
more
modelos. Então, eu gostaria de
broad than
sugerir
sciences
que
and
essa
models. So I'd like
complexidade,
to
esse quadro que
suggest
é
that
mais
this
rico,
complexity
fosse também considerado
should be
nesse
considered
contexto, porque eu acho que
within
cria
this
uma
context.
visão
I think it
mais
creates a
contextualizada, mas
more
mais realista
realistic
o que está acontecendo com a
view of
população,
what's
o que
happening with
eles
the
acham,
population, what they
quais são as
think,
alternativas, acho que são
what are
poucas
the
as
alternatives,
alternativas e quais são os impactos na saúde
and
das
what are
alternativas.
the impacts
Isso
in their health.
autoriza
And
e
this
facilita mais o debate público, que não é
makes it
debate
easier
só
for the
baseado
public
numa
debate
modelagem,
because
tem uma
it's not a
modelagem,
debate based only in one modeling.
não é um problema, esses modelos
And
são usados por todo lado do mundo,
these models are used
mas ao
everywhere.
mesmo tempo dá
But at
mais
the same
contexto
time, it provides more context and creates this clearer view in which alternatives can be assessed as well.
There are some things about methodology, and you're talking about epidemiologists, and I've worked many years with that, but there are some key points that need to be reviewed, and I will do my written comments on that. But for example, I think there is a decimal issue because the cleanest place in the world has 2.4 micrograms per cubic meter of particles that is in Iceland. So we cannot create an estimate that use zero as a counterfactual. So we cannot compare with zero pollution because zero pollution does not exist. There is no zero clean place in the world. So if we use the same models as Dunkler, we talk about 8 to 9 microgram per cubic meter. So the issue is, what is the additional that this industry is causing? And I think it's key to understand that. Also, the data on health for epidemiologists, we need to understand this denominator for the population. We always say that there are so many cases above the average, above the existing number of the previous year. So this idea of qualifying and characterizing the denominator, it cannot be neglected either. And the third point is to register better and document the populations that you have estimated, because Porto Alegre is closer to Candiota than Buenos Aires, and Porto Alegre has 4 million inhabitants. So we need to list the populations in the cities, and I think this needs to be done. So this number of precision numbers, I will hand you in writing. I think that's the role of scholars. So these things must be rethought and redone. But I would like to emphasize once again the importance of the study, the importance of the air pollution to health, as you highlighted very well, and the importance of the problem of having coal power plants and energy produced by coal when there are opportunities and alternatives that are concrete and they're available to us. So thank you. I would like the floor to Professor. Well, coming after Professor Dora is quite a challenge. I will introduce myself. I am Lavínia Fatina. I'm a geneticist doctor, and I work in an area that we call teratogenesis. That is the effects. Even though I am a geneticist, I work in the interface of genetics with the environment. So is the effect of environmental agents that goes through medications and what we are talking here today, and reproductive outcomes. So even though I started working with congenital abnormalities, I am working with outcomes which is low birth weight and preterm pregnancies. And there are also key events which are issues with neurodevelopment. We have also cancer that coming after that. Most of them have this prenatal origin. So I would like to congratulate on the work that we are classifying outcomes. So the outcomes on reproductive health are very well documented when we talk about pollution and air pollution, and they cause impacts. And it's very important to have an assessment of those real impacts. So I agree that this piece of work you've created is very important. It's a model. It's a modeling that can be very useful because it can be applied in other locations. I have my own observation, my own homework. I have left some slides here within this concept that we need to think about. So no problem, we can go to the next. I am not a co-author of this article, but there is this group of the Federal University of Rio Grande that has been working with pollution in the Candiota area. And one of the articles is on their estimates for air pollution. And it's a beautiful piece of work because they published it in 2022 on the gestational and neonatal outcomes. So we can move to the next screen. And I would like to show you that Carlos Doyle and I have not agreed upon what we're going to say, but so this table that is extracted from the article, it shows, I highlighted the key points here. We have the preterm birth, sorry, this is the low birth weight. They work with 1,900 mother and children pairs and they estimated several risk factors. We have low birthplace and preterm birth. These are multi-factors. We can have one factor as being the main factor, but it doesn't work alone. So they run adjusted analysis. That is, they see factors that are contributing and interacting and the factors that stay as significant. They show that the exposure to the matter, they use here PM10, which is not exactly what you have worked on your study. We show that there is a 27% risk to the exposure, but they also show how there are other important risk factors. Let's say black skin and have low access to prenatal care. We're not talking about wanting to have prenatal care, but the accessibility to prenatal care. So when we must take into consideration that some people, some groups of people will be more vulnerable, and there the impact will be higher. So we have to look at the numbers, but this number is not equally distributed over the segments. And this is an important takeaway. We need to learn and take into consideration that. For preterm birth, I would like to call your attention to a classic factor in Brazil. One of the greatest risk factors for preterm birth is C-section. It is an elective procedure, is not risk-related, and anticipates deliveries, and some of them will be preterm. So you see how in Candiota, we have the cesarean as one risk of preterm birth. We also have the issue of skin color, but also the low access to prenatal care. So we were, in this article, they also approach the issue, and we can observe the impact of proximity. We did a piece of work in Rio Grande do Sul, not in Candiota though, and we showed also that there was a strong influence on socioeconomic level and the proximity to the household. So people with higher socioeconomic levels, they live against the wind direction. So the people who are most affected by pollution is the people who live in those areas. So we're going to have people with low access to prenatal care and the Black population. Also, I would like to show you that Brazil has public systems of information on health data that are very important. SINASC will give you a number on living newborns, and we're going to see how many preterm births have taken place and low birth weight as well. So I agree that we need a denominator, which is not clear in the work if it's just referring to the population of Candiota. I also believe there are more to be considered. So those 180 are over how many births? So I would estimate that it will be over not just the Candiota municipality, but we have some available data from 2017 to 2024 that living newborns, out of 1,042, we have 121 preterm, and low birth weight, we have 92. As I said, oh, we have a little yellow cat passing by here. Oh, so sweet. So we see the numbers here that are not so different from the Brazilian's prevalence, but it does not mean that we have an impact, that we don't have an impact on air pollution. We may have heterogenic factors that may have different impact on different populations. But when we talk, especially when we talk about the Brazilian average, which will have a variation of other risk factors. So I'd like to congratulate on the piece of work. The impact is important. This modeling will be complemented by other studies and more data, and will grant us force to work. And thank you for dedicating your time to a scientific analysis on the theme. Thank you.
Professores, doutores, obrigado pela
So
participação.
doctors and professors, thank you for your participation. Yes, indeed, when we bring scientific studies and we set this partnership between the third sector and the academia, we create the space that will promote the debate on studies. We always have improvement points. And I would like to bring you some piece of information, especially to the public, that the Candiota power plant is renewing their operating license that will expire on April 6th. It was on for 10 years. And one of the conditions is having studies on public health. So the entrepreneurs, JF Investment for Candiota 3, they present in their environmental licensing that all this data is public, so we can have even access through the IBAMA system, and we can follow on the licensing process. There are also studies. We work here with several journalists. We have Jefferson here. We have a wide range of journalists that are paying close attention to the agenda on Candiota, because they are going through on closing, decommissioning or not. What do we do with the workforce and employment? And it's important because of the sustainable and just energy transition. So Arayara has a team to run this analysis, and we are going to have our environmental manager talking here. And we also work along with the team. Actually, we have a golden dog here, a mutt, walking around here in our study. We are going to talk about the issue on contamination when we talk about the polluants on the traffic chain of fisheries. So we talk about the studies by the own entrepreneur. And when we talk about the renovation of the license, we are bringing the study. And not just that. And you brought me yet another study on Candiota, but all those articles, they were a task force just with Arayara and journalists, and it's available for the public. To the public, we have recent studies on the issue of public health by several researchers that are focused on the Candiota region, and they bring us quite alarming data when we talk about genetic mutation, especially cancer. And we have a very interesting study on contaminants on children's urine. We find lead, for example. And when we analyze territories and we talk about contamination and diffuse pollution, we have to take into account several factors. So we bring this concern with the carbon industry, have 2 power plants, we have 2 mines, we have a shortage of hydric resources, So the hydric capacity is a concerning factor, and we have the large volume of affluents besides the contamination. So we have the issue of understanding all the variables, but when we analyze these studies, we are collaborating in this process of the licensing of the power plant. And Arayara works with this focus, which is the extension of the of hiring the continuation of this power plant. We have a budget for the contract, and this power plant has over 5 million reais in fines, and these fines are not paid. So Arayara comes and legally questions why the fines are not being paid. So we work with advocacy and litigation, but also we are talking about those bills that we call them jabuti or male turtle. And even after the law that sees the contracting of coal power plant, we talk about 2040, but 2040 is tomorrow, and we're going to have an operation until 2040, and then we're talking about commissioning or decommissioning and so on, and then the worker is lost in the middle of this way. So we must work with a phase-out date towards energy transition, and this element must take public health into consideration when we talk about the licensing process. We are talking about the Ministry for Mines and Energy. It opened for public consultation for only 7 days at 36 million per year to subsidize coal into a state-owned company in Rio Grande do Sul. So we are really concerned that we still have a coal mining company involved in this process, and we have this study that will go beyond this value, and we are not taking into consideration that the 2 billion that was going to go over until 2040. And then we go up to 25 billion reais. So I'm talking about the fourth of a trillion with public resources, with an estimated value, with a deep impact on public health. So it seems that when we're talking about the investor, they only understand the money. When we talk about ESG and stock exchange. So we are here still investing in these projects, and we are fighting. Even with this professor that is sitting at the back, I would like to congratulate you on the studies that you were doing on diversification of economic diversification in Candiota. We need many more studies. We need more studies on energy transition, so that we can understand this horizon for economic diversification, so we don't have to depend on this fossil coal dependency here until we reach 2050. I have spoken too much, but we bring these concerns here. We'd like to reinforce once again the importance of creating this connection of the academia and civil society, and understand the dialogue. The people tell us, you are an ONG against coal, we don't want to have a talk with you, and so on. But we need this lasting debate. We need to visit the territory. As our researcher said, I am visiting Candiota. We are dealing with people's lives, even if it's the worker or the baker or the inhabitants of the territory, and also the people who are being affected. So we must bring this concern, because childhood is already affected by this decision, and the effects can be multiplied into Santa Catarina. We have here the professor from Criciúma, and we have almost 10% of the Santa Catarina territory impacted through mining, coal mining effects. This is not us. This is the federal government that has published a study shortly before COP30.
Just a comment, I'd like to leave a message of the importance of having a task force of university to create this health impact team in a broader way to contribute to this debate, because it's really important. As we are saying, certain things do not appear when we provide context for. So it's an important gap. So it's important to have this reflection. What can we do in this sense? Good morning, everyone. I'm Mir Dias. I'm an environmental engineer. At Arayara, I am an environmental manager, and I follow this issue closely since Paraná to Rio Grande do Sul, and coal is a problem in all the three states of the south of Brazil. The beginning of the coal exploration in Brazil, when we was between the two world wars, it was turned towards navigation, then the industry with the national steel company to serve the steel industry in Brazil. Then after thermoelectrics industry, we have several plants. The Candiota plant was included in this, and they always have complicated and problematic environmental issues. They all have they have been taken to court. There's no initiative for energy transition here in the south, but there's the absence of working energy transition, economical transition, and in the localities that rely on coal exploration. For instance, in Paraná, the state-owned companies who use the plant after privatization, they chose to decarbonize their portfolio, and since 2024, the plant stopped, and the municipality is suffering with that, and there's no plan for the Paraná government to work with that situation. And around 2021, 2022, there was the approval of the Just Transition law. It was that plant was the first one to work with this, and also a plant that since the years 2000 have a billionaire subsidy from 2000 to 2010. In 2023, 2024, more than 2 billion estimated in subsidies. I've been in Santa Catarina, the field, and the Santa Catarina contamination is really serious because they have the greatest environmental liabilities. In Paraná, we don't know what is being impacted. At least nothing was published, or there's no evidence on that. Here at Candiota, I've collected water, and we saw heavy metal pollution and contamination in the waters. Coal brings these issues, as Professor Waldo said very well in the beginning. We see that there's a high concentration of sulfur here,
that
provokes generates several acid rains, and this acid environment is really harmful, whether in the soil or in the waters. So it's really concerning,
para a gente poder evidenciar todos os impactos
so that
relacionados ali à exploração de
we
carvão,
can
mas
study
também
all
para a
the
produção elétrica, né?
evidences,
E fato assim, bem relevante
and
dessa
a fact
questão
that
que,
is
inclusive,
really
foi abordada
relevant
pelo Jamie no início da
that was talked
apresentação,
about
foi que o
by
carvão do
Jamie in the
Brasil,
beginning
ele
of
assim, não tem
presentation,
grandes
is that coal
potenciais
in Brazil
energéticos,
have
né? O teor
no
caloriferro é
great
muito baixo.
energy
Tem
potentials.
uma grande concentração de cinzas no
There's a
carvão
huge
que limita
concentration
ali
of
o seu
ashes
uso, né?
that
No
really
caso, você
limits
necessita
its
de mais carvão
use,
para
and
se
you need
gerar uma
more coal to
quantidade de
generate
energia.
a
E
certain
todos
amount
esses
of
reagentes estão
energy,
com
and all
traços de
this waste
mercúrio,
they
arsênio,
have
cádmio,
mercury,
chumbo,
arsenium,
às vezes até
lead,
materiais radioativos.
cadmium, and even
E isso
radioactive
fica, né, nos
materials,
depósitos.
and
E aí,
this
como que a
is
gente trata isso é uma
kept
outra
in
questão.
the deposits, and
Mas
how do we
isso
take
tudo
care of
gera
that? That's
impactos na
another issue.
saúde, né?
But this
E
really
danos à
generates
economia,
health
novas
impacts,
ácidas. E isso é muito importante
damages the
porque a usina de
economy,
Candiota
acid
2 já
rains.
foi
But that's
fechada
important because
justamente por
the
degradar a
Candiota
qualidade
plant
do ar.
2
Teve um
was
levantamento de
closed
conduta
because of
firmado ali
air
entre o
degradation.
IBAMA, o MMA, MME,
And
a
there
Eletrobras, que era
was
a antiga
also an agreement by the
detentora da
Ministry
usina,
of
né? E essa
Environment
usina foi
and
fechada
Mines and
justamente por isso,
Energy.
porque ela não conseguia atender
Uh,
a
they decided to
legislação de
close
qualidade do ar,
this
na época
plant
era a
because
CONAMA
they
03 de
couldn't
90, salvo melhor juízo.
keep their numbers
Então,
within the
vemos que o
acceptable
carvão ele é
numbers. So
problemático em várias
we see
frentes
that
e
this is
que muito
a
tem
problem
se
in
depositado ali, no
in
caso,
different
esforços
fronts.
legislativos para estender esse
And
tipo de
there
geração e,
are
consequentemente,
legislative efforts to extend these
destinar
actions,
dinheiro que talvez poderia estar sendo utilizado para a
and
transição energética, para a valorização das
monies that
populações,
could be
que
sent
tem
for
a
the
exploração de carvão,
population of energy
possa se
transition
qualificar, que possa
is being sent
ter
to
novas atividades
these
profissionais,
plants.
empregos sustentáveis,
We could
desenvolvimento
have
local,
sustainable
cooperativismo. Tem
jobs,
uma gama de oportunidades que a gente
local
tem
economical
e não
growth, and
necessariamente estão
several
sendo
other
atendidas,
things
né?
that are not being
Somente a prorrogação do
met,
contrato das usinas, né? Sem
but
que
only
tenha
we
esse
see
olhar ali
the
regional. Eu acho que isso é
extension
muito
of the
importante. Então,
plants
estamos chegando em períodos de
contract.
eleições e é muito
So now
importante ver que
this
quem que
year is an
está
election year,
querendo prorrogar o carvão e não necessariamente
so they
fazer
want
uma
to
transição
extend
energética
the
que
contract, not
propõe ali
necessarily
melhoria da qualidade
to
de vida
an energy
para
transition
todas essas
that
populações
will prolong
impactadas.
lives for
Muito obrigado.
those who live around the plants. Thank you very much.
O melhor exemplo que essas atuais
The
políticas,
best
que apenas
example
o
that this
incentivo
present
sustentou
policies
a contratação de reserva dessa usina
that
não
hiring
assegura o
this
trabalhador é que
subsidy
se o
does
IBAMA
not
indeferir o
give
pedido de
safety for
renovação da
the worker,
licença de
because
operação
if
de
the
Candiota 3
IBAMA does not
houver esse
interfere,
indeferimento, o que vai ser feito com esse
what
trabalhador?
is going to
Qual o amparo
what's
que ele
going
vai
to
ter?
happen with this worker?
Trabalhador hoje da usina de
What
Candiota 3 e da
support
própria companhia rio-grandense?
these workers will
Nenhum,
have from
que é a demissão.
the
Então, o
mining
que a gente
company?
aponta é esse, a gente precisa
So
discutir
none, there
plano
will be
realmente
their
robusto
jobs will
de
be
transição
terminated. So
energética
we need to
justa e
discuss
sustentável,
a
né, para
just
essa
and
região. E aí eu
sustainable
passo para a nossa
energy
colega, a
transition
Daniela, da
plan.
Arayara e
So
também do
I'll pass
Observatório
on to
do Carvão
Daniela,
Mineral, para fazer
and
comentário.
from Arayara and the Coal Observatory.
Bom dia, meu retorno tá bom, o áudio tá bom.
Good morning, can you hear me well?
Bom dia a todas e todos
Good morning,
presentes
everyone.
online. Vou começar me
All those who
apresentando.
are
Sou a
in
Daniela
person there
Barros,
and then the
sou
line.
engenheira
I'm Daniela
ambiental,
Barros. I'm an
possuo formação técnica em meio
environmental
ambiente e
engineer,
pós-graduação em
and
auditoria e
also I have
licenciamento
a
ambiental.
PhD in
Também
environmental
atuo
licensing.
como coordenadora de
Also, I
projetos do
work
Clima
with
no
the
Instituto
project
Arayara
coordinator
e
of
membro
the
e
Arayara
pesquisadora do Observatório do
team,
Carvão
and
Mineral.
also I'm a member of
Bom,
the Mineral Coal
eu preparei
Observatory.
para trazer aqui hoje para falar um pouco sobre.
I'm going to talk
Pensei bastante
about
sobre o licenciamento ambiental, agora também
the
focado no caso
environmental
da
licensing,
renovação, né, da licença.
focused on the possible renovation of Candiota 3, and next week it will be the date of cessation or renovation. And there are several interesting and important issues that we need to highlight here in these studies on these perceived impacts. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the relevance of this report. It brings new things, which in the perspective of environmental licensing, when we will materialize the impacts, this is not something mandatory and assessed. And for many years in traditional analysis, these were not taken into account. Candiota, this is a problem because we're not talking about an isolated work. We have two mining and two energy generation that they add up. And the data presented today is just a snapshot from the 2017 to 2025. And they show several impacts. And these numbers, they will double up to 2040. So it's important to reflect about this licensing model. This is a very fragmented process. The plants are licensed separately, and what is assessed is individualized issues, but the report shows that the impacts even go beyond our borders. So it's important to have this assessment in the environmental licensing to enable or not enable uh, these endeavors with the high polluting capacity. So it's today we have international environmental commitments. We have a huge potential in terms of energy transition. On the other hand, we have subsidies. We extend the contracts when we take into account the mineral coal. And this source is about 3% of the electricity generation, and the impacts are disproportional when we take into account health and environment. Also, in terms of licensing and extension of these operations on these impacts. Also, we have the environmental conditions and inspections when we think about the emissions that were violated, especially in terms of sulfur oxide. And it's not just an operational failure, it's a systemic failure. It's a systemic flaw. Although we have the operation licensing, we need to ensure these continue monitoring, because without this, the licensing has no function and it's just a formal instrument. And with this proposition and bringing points of reflection, I'd like to bring to the table that the report does not talking only about impacts. It brings a debate that is important for the decision making. We need to incorporate the health impact discussion that is well structured when we talk about these works. And it's also a regional analysis, impact analysis that it goes beyond this idea of analyzing the projects independently one from the other. And also we had to think about just energy transition that is being discussed and implemented not only in Brazil but abroad as well. So it needs to have a synergy between environmental licensing and these international agreements. And also there are some issues concerning the the Candiota region. It needs public incentives so that it can have a new development cycle. It doesn't make sense to maintain public subsidies to an activity that generate negative and avoidable impacts. And we as citizens and decision makers need to improve an energy model or will be extending these problems for many more decades. I hope that this report is the beginning of several others and that we can make a just energy transition not only for Rio Grande do Sul state but all the cities and municipalities that are impacted by this. Thank you very much and thank you for the invitation to be part of this. And I'll pass the floor to John once again. I'd like to bring a few studies that Arayara has been developing. We have the monitor energy platform. It makes available several data from the energy sector on coal, oil and gas, electric generation, wind, solar, of the whole energy grid in Brazil. And it's really important to understand how is the dynamic being planned here in Brazil. We're going through climate change process and all this planning is really important. We have this study from the mineral coal monitoring, the location of the plants, environmental issues. So you should go there and access it and read it. Here also there's a study of Candiota up to 2050, and we brought a few elements that are inherent to the plants since the starting from the coal exploration in 2018 to 2022. I think it's around 18 billion reais in fines related to mining. And also here the fines 1.8 million fines reais in fines. We have the acid rains in terms of death rates for respiratory diseases, and also study that we did for COP in terms of the impact of the extension of the contract up to 2040 in terms of subsidy impacts and theme setbacks. This is a very general, we have general information here, and we show the amount of workers in each state with data of the Mineral Coal Association. We show the relationship between coal and other things, and also the financial impact that will bring. We also have the projection on how the extension of this contract will impact for Brazil, up to 107 billion reais up to 2040. This money could be used in several positive things for these territories. So it goes from subsidy to this compulsory hiring that will keep on generating impacts without the social return that should have in our point of view. So I pass the floor.
We are going to open the floor now for Q&A. Just remembered from Professor Waldo and other partners, Arayara has a very strong operation since 2019 with a lawsuit along with several other environmental entities against the Mina Guaíba endeavor, and the lawsuit closed the entire operation. We would have those dejects, we're gonna have those washouts entire into our rivers because they have this dam that was on 10 meters high. So we still have some other affected areas through data centers and so on. So do I take the microphone around? I think it's better with a microphone because then it gets registered. I am Joel. I work with genetics. When we talk about coal, it's always important to remember something that Dr. Waldo talked early on. Every particle of gold is an aggregated of several minerals, including several toxic metals. The second point that it's important is we must always remember that pollution by coal, it goes beyond the basal level. Last year, a study that was published mapped all the pollution by metals all over the world, and Rio Grande do Sul was considered a pollution hotspot for metal pollution, especially due to the use of fertilizers. Since we produce a lot of monocultures, we use a lot of fertilizers that contain several metals. So pollution by coal overlaps the metal-based pollution that is already very high. So it's important always to remember that, because sometimes we think coal as a particle producing an inflammatory response in the lung, but we cannot affect all the effects that are very difficult to detect of the metals that are released in those coal particles. Having said that, yesterday I was part of an event here on the extraction of the rare earths, and we had this very robust study showing the genotoxic potential of the rare earth elements. I won't have enough time to discuss this here, but I would like to bring this theme here of rare earth elements because we have representatives of SEMA here, and they were there yesterday. I see that the state of Rio Grande do Sul sees coal under pink lenses, just like rare elements, because it contains rare earth elements. So besides being an energy source, is also a source of rare earth elements. And since we have this rush towards rare earth, I think Rio Grande do Sul must pay deep attention on the issue of rare earth elements in coal. So the debate on coal exploration will not stop in the generation of energy. It will go into the rare earth elements. Yesterday, also in the talk by CIMA representatives, it was said that the coal exploration in Rio Grande do Sul and Brazil would be not so much of a problem because the percentage of exploited and mined area would be very little. Therefore, it would not have such a deep impact. Yes, indeed, the area is very small. However, when we consider everything that has been presented, we see that it doesn't make any sense because the effect of the pollution by coal is not restrained to the mining area. The metals, they contaminate water bodies and air, and coal contaminates air. So I would like to hear the SEMA representatives, once we have been presented to all this data, how do you see this explanation that was given us yesterday, that the coal exploration would not be such a problem because the mined area is very small? So I would like to hear from SEMA about this comment made yesterday and comparing to what was presented here today. I would like to congratulate you on your study, and we have learned who is really harmed here. So I'd like to hear from Sema who benefits from Candiota, because everybody here knows who is not. I am Raquel Guimarães. I am a bibliotecarian at the chemical dispensary. I did not watch the talk yesterday, but I heard of it. So we know who is harmed, but we want to know who benefits. Why are they going to grant the licensing? I worked at a factory for 10 years, and FEPAM must do the creation licensing, the deployment licensing, and the recovery licensing. You are talking operation licensing. You are talking here about operation license, and I would like to hear from Sema who benefits in Candiota from that. Raquel Guimarães, I work with in the librarian at the chemical department. I would like to hear who benefits in Candiota, because I know who isn't. My son and my cousin's daughter, they are preterm babies and they are alive. Why? Because we could afford an incubator. And who does, and who can't afford? Nobody thinks about it. Nobody thinks of the mothers who lose their children. We have 8 babies who are to term 8 months and then they are stillborn. Nobody thinks about them. Who is gaining from that? Someone is. Can I have that answer, please? Thank you, Raquel, for your words. Yes, what we have brought here is the people, is the company group that benefits with millions and billions that are destined to coal within this chain that we believe to be unsustainable. What I was going to propose to the SEMA representatives here, if you want to have the floor now. Yeah, okay. So briefly, I would like to congratulate Arayara and the panelists for the quality, the density, and relevance of everything you have brought here today. It's quite a complex case. It demands us to have the ability to be intelligent and sensible to everything that is going on. So we must understand how this will cooperate and how we can use that to improve. I would like to suggest a chapter for analysis that meets the defense of endeavors in disorder. So they try to justify this monumental pressure on the environment. We talk about the cellulose company here because they generate jobs. So when we talk about jobs, let's talk about technology. What kind of job is it? What kind of income? What social dimension does this job have? What are the capacity building cycles that we have? How are we going to renew the work? What is the tax yield of this within public budgeting? And the large companies, as we know, they are required to bring elements that talk about the life quality of communities when we talk about social well-being and culture. So what are the social and cultural impact factors that are not just as assessed like health issues? We know that their culture and social life is social well-being is key. So we are talking maybe about some humanistic ideas that were founded by Marxism, but we are talking about working with some groups like JBL. So the capital will be for sure the one who benefits from it. Capital will always benefit, but how can we weight those options? As a director here, my SEMA partners are always welcome here. I understand the comments of our colleague here, Raquel. We are talking about people who are exposed, who do not have the government is not capable to operate on a level that protects them. So I would like to welcome you cordially here to be in this dialogue environment. We are having this dialogue, having elements and data. And as we trust you as public servants, and we trust that you are capable of your position. So I would like to make a declaration from our institute and having you being part of our agenda. I would like also to thank the biologist Francisco Milanese, who is also a member of the committee fighting mining, who is a key person when we fight the Guayuba mine. And now we are going to move to our SEMA. I am Christian. I'm Subsecretariat for Infrastructure at SEMA. I have with me the mining director, Otávio, and our server also, Douglas, who is a mining engineer. First of all, I would like to congratulate Arayara for this event and say that today we are a subsecretary within SEMA. We used to be the former Mines and Energy Secretary that in 2019 was incorporated to SEMA, and both departments works in public policies. I would like to say that today, since we were yesterday on the rare earth elements event yesterday, we would like to remind you that the event was not promoted by us, but by the university. And we came here to support the event just like yesterday. And maybe we can also contribute just like the academia is doing. Maybe and maybe compose on some issues that have been brought to here. So this is why we are here today. We would like to remind you that us do not license. Us and our infrastructure secretary, we do not grant licensing. Just to remind you. And we are here to support the event and to contribute. I will give the floor to to the mining expert, who is our director, Otávio. Well, guys, good morning, everyone. Thank you for the invite, John. You are our partners in building this event. Yes, this is a dialogue. This is part of passion is part of our dialogue. We are a government that has dialogue with society, which is critical to building a society that's collaborative. This is a very complex subject, it's very paradoxical too. Every day we debate this. And this theme can be subdivided in three axes: mining, energy, and climate. Each will have its own know-how, contributions, and knowledge. We know that coal has always been the ugly duckling and the undesired energy source. But if we go back in time, it was considered energy, a good energy, because it avoided the killing of whales or deforestation when wood was used as fuel. So we have changed vocations, we have changed energy sources. We are in the south that has almost 50% of the coal reserves. It is an asset because it generates jobs and income and taxes to the state. And within mining, we cannot give that up. We cannot just discard this mineral because it has developed in many regions. We're talking about Candiota, that is a target of the just energy transition, and Arayara has been contributing to that. It has not been released yet, but we are talking about contributing. We have numbers that are part of the climate pool here in Brazil. So the reserve is there. We know about the asset. We know that every rock carries elements that are dangerous to health, but also constructive to the cities. We have mineral issues. We talk about strategic minerals and energy transition that you cannot do without mining. It's hypocritical to say that mining does not contribute to anything. Otherwise, we're going to go back to the cave age. Society is built upon that. I would like to be in a society that would have 100% of recycled garbage. And this is not true. We must be aware of our consumption patterns. We must understand about the liabilities we generate. John is here. We cannot be hypocritical about it. So I'm talking about under the optics of mining. And when we talk about energy, the thermoelectric. Hello, Raquel. I am Otávio. I am a geologist and engineer at CIMA. We must bear in mind the flow. The thermoelectrics are licensed by IBAMA, by the federal government, and they have a contract with the energy agency. But here we have FIPAM licensing. CRM is SEMA has been, we have had this access incorporated to SEMA, which was initially bounded with mining and energy. So we have a backdrop of SEMA, and now we're going to talk about the climate axis. Since 2022, we are members of the Paris Agreement. We talk about just transition, among other processes in SEMA, so that by 2050, we are going to have zero emission of greenhouse gas effects. We know that the main emission is transportation, and then we have industry. The energy issue in Candiota is very localized. We talk about the radius, 30 square kilometers is the only industrial cluster. We talk about income and and work. If we do not consider that, we would not have a transition. And if we in all the abrupt transitioned areas have had many manifestations, and they were not considered. And so we have talked about the just transition because of all the issues we have of abrupt transitions. So we had job losses, and because we were looking for green jobs back then. So we want to work responsibly. We work with temporal deadlines. We needed to transcend government and elections. We have to work in tight with the federal government because we need resources. If Arayara has resource funds to work with us, you're gonna find a dialogue here. I have talked Lutz. I have invited Lutz to be here with me, but he did not come to our scheduled meetings. When we talk about mining, we have to look at it as an asset to the state. If in São Paulo had mineral coal, it would be an asset in São Paulo. This is used in the state. The use and its reserves is been used for many years. So it's not healthy to any location or state or country. I am talking about Porto Alegre. Just go visit Candiota. John was there in our public meetings. 100% of the people were in favor of this chain, in favor of maintaining coal. When we talk about rare earth, this is a potential. It may be economically viable or not. But then we do not have enough research. We do not have enough investment. And we are talking also about mitigation of this liability, but every industrial operation has liabilities. We know that the liabilities that are created by solar power, by wind farms, and you cannot reconvert those jobs if you move from thermoelectric into wind farm and solar power. We know that solar power generates very few jobs. And today we are talking about also the disruptions caused by the wind farms. So when we talk about the electric matrix, it's dependable also on the mining, the coal power plants. So in Candiota, if nothing were happening, it would be okay. I'm not the spokesperson for that, but this is the scenario we have. If it would not touch Candiota as it does, it would be okay. We know that the position of Candiota Arayara that fights coal. We are thankful that we live in a democratic state that allows us to study more and have a healthy debate. I celebrate this freedom. It's a question of balance. We must find a balance. Back in Candiota, coal is important. Today, the slogan of the city is the capital of mineral coal. They will not be decommissioned. We're not going to breach any contract. So we have to work because we need the economic diversity that is deserving, that the community deserves. Just like what happened in Baixo Acuí, that they had abrupt decommissioned power plants, but they also managed to find economic diversity. But we have had reports on drug addiction by the population. So we must also talk about the problems, the issues of natural resources. We work towards bringing economic diversity. It's important. It's quite controversial. If you work in the industry, you don't want to go back into the rural areas. You have had this migration. And we have a population migrating into universities and technical schools. They don't want to work in rural areas anymore. They want opportunities in industries because it generates income. This is their argument. And we must have a talk, we must have an equal standpoint that is social, that is financial, that is environmental. So an area of society will always suffer with whatever decision we make. So I'd like to thank you for your comments, for your attention. Yeah, yes, I have concluded. And we are open to welcome you and have all the entities for a conversation and to contribute with our studies.
First of all, good morning, especially to you who have invited me. I'm Ermelindo. I'm a colleague I was used to be colleague with Douglas. Also, I know the people from the Secretary of Environment and Logistic Infrastructures. I am a worker for CRM for 22 years. And I live 200 meters from the entry of the companies. A few issues that I'd like to. Who knows who has been in Candiota? Who has been there? We live in Candiota. We work in Candiota. I breathe coal 8, 9 hours per day. I have a direct contact always. But I've been there for 22 years. In the company, there are 10 people. I'm 50 years old. There's one person there who's 47 years old and still working within the company in work safety hazards. I have a preterm birth son who's studying at the engineering university, and several other kids studying Santa Maria. Santa Maria has a numbers higher than Candiaca. I saw it's 14 years, and they have no coal. What I want to bring for this debate is that those who work with coal are not superhumans. During the pandemics, when many people had were died in two mines of coal who didn't. There were two mines of coal who didn't stop. They helped to provide power for the hospitals. There was no one went to the hospital because of acute respiratory disease. You could be a professor. You speak very well. I am a mechanic. I'm I'm not going to discuss your data, but I'd like to have a deeper study. I want to see data. I'm not a professor. I'm not going to question the data of those who have PhD or master's degree, but I live together with those people. As where are those people going? Where is this money going? Do you know where Candiota is among 30 municipalities who have no industry? Only one has an industry. Otávio said 90,000 square meters, kilometers. We have 96 square kilometers. Only me and that person work with people that there's only one industry. In talking with Arayara, or you love coal. I want a meeting here where you present to us. Okay, here's the plan. Just stop working with the industry with coal, and now you start working with this. Okay, I'll be together with you. I'm not advocating coal. I am advocating a city where within 30 municipalities, only this city has jobs. I am I'm talking about jobs, so people are not just become homeless or something like that. Thank you very much. I'll pass the floor to Mike to Raquel. Very good, but I want to know, what are you doing for the transition? You said that you are doing something for transition from coal to what? I work in the factory for 10 years. The factory is the city. If this factory closes, the city has no income. I'm not crazy. I'm just saying that we need to have transition. Are you doing the transition, or you're still doing research? Let's research and do the transition. I don't want anybody to be homeless. We need, we have potential, but Rio Grande do Sul is recently doing bad things. We are the greatest state with feminicides. Is that nice? Do you think that it's nice? Sorry if I'm screaming, but I'm really excited on this. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have Candiota, but we need an alternative. You think that Rio Grande do Sul is a champion in feminicide? Is that nice for the sexist men who think that women are they own women? I'm not going into that issue now, but let's go back to Candiota. We need transition. I've worked 10 years in a paper company. It was very good for me economically, but it was better for those people who hired me. But ask the Chilean people who fired me because they couldn't ha have a library. If they were going to create a company such as this, do you think they were going to do it? Why do they come here? Why? That's a question. Because of time, we're closing now. It's an honor. We are favorable to the debate. I thank you for all the contributions. We're still here available. I would like to thank Emelino, the Union of the Candiota Miners. Our director is going to do the final remarks, but we saw the urgency to include the fourth sphere, which is public health. We need to include this in the discussions in energy transitions. It's not just a call for more for 100 years. We are at your disposal to build and attract investments for the region and strengthen the initiatives that are already present, and also the strategic environmental assessment, which is what helped the Judge Claritis to close the thermal plant from Nova Serval. So which the contract was not created, so that we don't have new plants in the region, and the ones that they keep on going, they have to have a phase out plan. The state policy says that. I have to pass the microphone for Nicole because we have a problem with different time frames. And so I'm going to be very brief, I promise. Just a quick comment, just to answer Raquel. We're about to launch a plan. Everybody is invited for the launch of the plan. Yes, it will be well received by you will be well received by Otávio. We have a plan of just energy transition. We took into account 14 products, each one with its complexities. It was a very intense year to build this plan. And there's no present projects, and during the floods in 2024, what create the what made the state still have electric power, was the Pampalus plant in the south. If we didn't have that backup, we would have uh, a blackout. So thank to it, just to make it clear, because it's still a necessary backup for the state. If we didn't have this, probably the government would be supporting it as well. So I'm going to be as brief as possible. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody's participations, the professors who brought their critical point of view to the study and suggested the improvements. And we'd like to deepen this partnership with the university to develop new studies that could complement data that were produced. Also, I'd like to address some issues that were addressed here, that were said here, especially in the end. And Melinda, I'm sorry that your son was a victim of cold because a preterm birth. I'm pregnant now. I wouldn't like my son to have a preterm birth, and I'm trying to have the best food as possible and cleanest as possible. We know that the babies who have a preterm birth, they have pulmonary lung issues, and being born preterm births in places with air pollution. I believe that he has respiratory problems. If he doesn't, that's good for him. 430 deaths that already happened because of coal pollution. That's quite significant, and it needs to be placed on paper comparing to the amount of jobs. I know Candiota, I've been there many times, and I see that it's a city that still needs a lot of development. There's a lot of, it's quite precarious in several issues. So those who are in Candiota knows that the coal didn't develop everything that it could and should. Throughout this year, Arayara is working with partners in studying in economical development, in the economic transition. So we have a proposal for the region to phase out the coal and attract all other kinds of economical activities that generate jobs. It will be a pleasure to work with the secretary if it's interested. Otávio said really concerned me, saying that we want open we want leave coal. If you spend 2.3 million reais in a study that's going to propose an energy transition, and before that you say that you're not going to let go, it shows that the government is not interested to decommission a thermoelectrical that doesn't contribute for a capacity reserve in an expensive way. We know, everybody knows and Arayara has launched several studies saying that 1 billion reais was spent in subsidies for the coal. This 1 billion reais comes from CDA. It's paid from all consumers of Brazil. It's not just focused in the city of Candiota or in the state of Rio Grande do Sul. It should be discussed by all the country because people pay more for their electric bills. Today is the second most expensive in the world because of this city subsidies. We've talked many times, Melinda. We want to propose that these CDE resources are sent to those who work with coal. They're close to a retirement process. We suggest they could be retired early, and the new workers they could be requalified in other areas. We could attract new activities and not insisting in a technology that is outdated, that harms economy, the environment, and that is not very efficient in energetic term-wise. So Otavio said that we're fighting. We are a scientific organization who want to propose an alternative for the energy issues in terms of tariffs, subsidy, public health, but also in climate issues. We are within a climate chaos, and if we don't do as much as possible to mitigate the greenhouse effects in Brazil, and we're not talking only about coal, we're going to go into a absolute chaos. And Candiota in the last 2 years has declared climate emergency 3 times for because of flood or droughts. And we're really concerned that this climate gaze is left aside in the debates. This is our function. This is our to work with the academia. CREA is a very serious organization and has been creating research on public health and energy issues. We also working with other partners, and I'd like to thank everybody's presence here, especially John, Jobert, and Daniela, who are organizing the study in Brazil, and our CREA partners who made the study in bringing a very interesting methodology. And I hope you all have a very nice day. Thank you, Nicole. Also, I'd like to thank someone because thanks to this person, this event is happening because Renata Sambai, who's our mobilization coordinator, because organizes the broadcast, and so it was not easy to organize this. And Jobert also really helped the Arayara directors, Juliana, Nicole, and also online. We had several people following us, but there's a specific researcher who's Juliana da Silva, who has several studies in coal and genetic mutation in Candiota. I think she's at Ubra now. Fevali, she's in the. So public university, private universities, I'd like to thank, and also Olga. I'd like to hug you because through you we created this partnership, and say thank you very much. If we printed our WhatsApp discussions to create this event, there would either provide a whole book. So Professor Francisco, thank you very much, as also, and people who are in the panel, and we'd like you all to invite you back so we can have an official picture for the event. So have a nice meal now for lunch.
Thank you.
Thank
Obrigado,
you.
ciao.
Bye.